All right, today we have we're going to continue with that line module we started with last week. We went through the first 4, 5, 6 pages of it. On page 7, if you remember, we did our. I'll click back and you can see on last week we did our studio time when we made our studios using line. And so we're going to look this week at again using line to create some cool art on our make day. And so we're going to be looking at how line can be used to express emotion or some type of feeling. In this one, we're looking at these explosions that are happening in these fireworks, and you can feel the excitement, the energy. You see the color that they've used and so forth. But what really brings all that excitement are these great lines that are being used, the lines that show the movement of those fireworks. And so one of the ways artists use line is to create movement. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the way artists use line, how they use line, how they show line in their work. And so throughout history, artists have demonstrated how meaningful their art studios are by creating artwork showing themselves work in their studios. Often, artists will paint self-portraits of themselves working in the art studios. They might have clues in their artworks which help you understand their personalities or expressions. And we're going to look here and look for how the artist has created the idea of what type of artist they are. And so when we look at this work of art, we see this artist sort of standing alone, working back from his work of art, standing back pretty far. What are some of the clues that we see about this work? This is Rembrandt, and so when we look at his studio, what are a few things we see? What kind of lines do you spot? Let's start there. Well, we see lots of straight lines. We see the lines used to create the impression of the boards here. We see these vertical and horizontal lines that create the room itself. We see some diagonal lines. What does the studio space tell us about Rembrandt? Was he messy? No, man, that's a very clean studio. Did he work on tiny little paintings a lot? No. He worked pretty big in scale. Look how big that easel is, how large that painting is. So we can get a little impression of the way that Rembrandt painted by looking at the way he creates these very clean lines that describe this very clean space and these very large paintings he worked on. Perhaps you have a messy studio. Let's take a look at this one. This artist is working in a studio that has paper laying on the floor. We see the way this artist used line. If you'll notice, we see the line being used up here to create the impression of the boards in the ceiling. Horizontal lines creating the rafters that go across. Diagonal lines creating these stairs that are in the back and the steps that go down. We see this uh, looks like he's got a model of some kind he's working from here. That's kind of neat. We see the line being used to create the easel itself and line that's used to create lots of detail. If you look at these windows, these very fine lines that create lots of detail in his windows. But what kind of impression do we get of the artist himself? Probably this guy's a little bit of a mess. His studio looks like mine. When we look at this artist, we look at, again, strong diagonal lines. And again, we see these really clean and very sharp uses of line. And this line delineates this very light area from this dark area. He's using contrast to create that implied line. We see these really sharp lines that create the outside exterior of the painting itself. And again, real crisp. I mean, we can even see such detail in this. We can see the edge of that painting and everything. Again, we see the lines used to create the boards and the floor and all the little furniture. And again, what we see from this artist, very organized. Okay, we see he's working from a photograph there or a drawing he did, a sketch maybe probably during this time. It wasn't a photograph, but a sketch he did or painting of the painting he wanted to do, and now he's working on it in his studio. And so we see clean space, organization, drawers, and all that stuff. This young lady's art studio, again, we see this as an incredibly creative space. Her lines, the lines she's using, not only are being used to create these vertical horizontals, her easels and so forth, but we see lots of cool organic shapes. Those um, apples and pears and the fruit she has in the bowl. The tables itself around it, they're not those uh, typical geometric shapes that we see. They have some sort of organic stuff going on to them. We see this sort of shape, these lines being used to create these unique shapes. And by having such interesting shapes and color and things going on, she's really demonstrating how creative her space is. It's filled with color. It's filled with lots of creative ideas. If you see back here, she's got lots of different things she could use in a still life, from plants and little bowls and vases. And here's a typewriter, and here's a water pitcher, and there's books, and there's all kinds of other paintings she's done that may be inspiring her. And there's like some type of light sconce over here, and this nice chair where maybe a model might sit. So lots of things, more still life items, lots of things that she could paint from. And so we recognize that what she's trying to show here is how creative her workspace is. So packing personality. Artists incorporate their personal style into their artwork in many different ways. Some of them use symbols. And when we talk about symbols, we're talking about pattern, image, design that represents or stands for something else. Often we call these also icons. If you have a little button on your screen of your computer, that's an icon. And what icon means, it's a little something that represents a bigger idea, like a symbol. Icon is sort of like a symbol. While some artists paint subjects or objects that represent them, when we talk about represent, we means it symbolizes. So if I want to represent the Nike logo, the Nike Corporation, we can show that Nike logo. That logo represents that company, if you will. We can check out a few ways that artists pack their personalities into their different art. So when we look at how symbols are used, this cave art, you can see lots of drawings using straight and diagonal lines. What do you think the artist was trying to express in this? So if we look at these designs, and boy, I wish that we could get these bigger. I don't know how big it is on your screen, but it's really not big enough. But we see lots of detail. We see a human figure here that's actually maybe a creation of the artist working in that space. It's a little hard to tell exactly what's going on, but I think that's sort of what they're trying to create in that image. Oops, let's go back. I didn't mean to do that so quickly. Sorry. We're going to look at that next one. Okay. Painting their favorite things. What's your favorite thing? Artists often show their personalities by painting their favorite thing. And look at the way they use line in these. So these are all different cakes. This is cake art. If you've ever watched one of my favorite shows, the Cake Off, I've done it again. The Cake Wars. We had a young lady from over in Berea, Kentucky. She has a company called Doodlebugs, who won that competition twice with some of the most amazing cake art I've ever seen. She did a sculpture the first time of the dragon from Shrek. It was perfect. It had all the Shrek characters around it. Amazing. This is a work of art by Keith Haring. Keith Haring is one of my very favorite artists, and he was really good at using line. He created lots of energy. We see the energy lines. If you look, you can tell that people are dancing. He did lots of these cool dancing people. And so he would use line to create the figure in a way that shows movement, but then he would also use these sort of action lines to show that sort of thing. And goodness gracious, every single time I clicked around it. Let's look at the last example here. Including their personal story. This is one of the reasons I want to come back, because I really like Frida Kahlo. Frida Kahlo was married to Diego Rivera, not once but twice. I always joke he was the guy so nice she married him twice. I don't know if he was really all that nice, but they were two of the most prominent artists to come out of Mexico and to represent this Mexican culture. They particularly during the early 1900s, when there was a lot of change in the culture and in society, and so they represented that change a lot through their artwork. Frida was big on telling her personal stories. She had an accident when she was on, I think she was on a trolley, which is sort of like an open air bus, and that trolley was hit by a bus. Um, she was severely injured, and because of that, for the rest of her life, she was in a wheelchair. She had lots of surgeries, back problems, back issues. She was in lots of pain. So a lot of the paintings she did were about her personal history, about the pain she went through, and that sort of thing. All right. Finding differences. So this is kind of relates to what we're going to be doing with our Make Day this week. We're going to be looking at how artists create landscapes and specifically how they do two specific things: realism and abstraction. Now they talk about non-objective here, and we're really not going to get too much into non-objective. Kandinsky was big on a lot of non-objective stuff. Non-objective means there's no identifiable object. Well, we're going to be working with a landscape, so we're going to be able to identify what's in there, but we're still going to abstract part of it, so it's a little different. So let's talk a little bit about what these things mean. So realism is where the artist is trying to capture the way this object or this scene that they are painting really sort of looks like in real life. What not necessarily photographic. Okay, if you look, this painting is realistic but not photographic. If we look, everything's in proper scale. Nothing's really big or really small. Nothing's been overly simplified. These aren't just simple triangle shapes. They're trying to show the value, the shadows, the light on those objects, the trees, the buildings, and so forth. And then the colors representation, which means the trees that are yellow because they are turning in fall are yellow. The ones that are a little red are a little red. The green ones are green, and that sort of thing. And so that's sort of realistic. When we look at abstraction, when we abstract something, abstraction means you're going to start to change that and make it look different than it does in real life in some way. And so you can manipulate those elements and principles of art like color, shape, texture, value, all those balance. We can take a look at all those types of things. And in this is a jockey riding a horse, and so we see it's been simplified. A horse has legs and all kinds of stuff. This just has the mane, and barely we can see an eye and the part of the nose, and we can just barely make out the jockey's head and his back maybe here, and we can kind of see the legs of the horse here, but we really get the sense of movement because it's been very much simplified. The colors are not representational. There's probably not a yellow streak on the back. The horse probably isn't white. The jockey again would have more detail, simplification, but also would have more complex color. So look at how the artist changed and abstracted. Again, we're not really going to get into non-objective. Non-objective means you're not going to be able to identify an object within that we're going to recognize. So this brings us to our studio time, and we're going to do something a little different than what they have us do in this studio time. And that's why I'm hoping you all are paying attention, come to class, and if you're not, be able at least watch the lessons, because we're going to actually create a landscape. And in our landscape, we're going to be using line to create organic shapes, geometric shapes, and then also look at how we can take part of that and abstract and do something a little different with it. All right, guys. I look forward to seeing you on our Make Day.